This is Blackstone Joe, and you're listening to Slick Talk.
If I say I'm an oil man, you will agree.
There's the stink of oil about him.
Hello and welcome into episode 157 of Slick Talk. I am your host, Blackstone Joe, and I'm glad you're here. Now that we're in the thick of the holiday season, I couldn't help but think about gift giving and how you need to match the gift to the person. As much as I would like to give my wife tickets to a Bears game or a brand new smoker, I understand that she has about as much use for football as she does the art of low and slow cooking. Not that she doesn't enjoy my mood more after a Bears win, or that she has anything against when I make a rack of ribs or a pork shoulder. The point is, you need to give someone a gift that they want for themselves, that they're going to make use of. And on a similar note, you also want to order the right tests for the right system in order to make use of the data and take care of that system that you own. Now, with us being capable of testing pretty much any petroleum-based product you can think of, we are not going to deny you testing if we're able to do it. But that doesn't mean that every result will mean something. Take a TBN and aircraft oil. Now, recently we've had some increased interest in the TBN test as it relates to aircraft engine oil. And this is just a good example of knowing what to expect before you go into it. That way, you won't leave disappointed with the result and what it may or may not mean for the engine and the oil that you're running. So a little about the TBN in general. That is the total base number, and it tells you how much active additive is remaining. But here's the thing. Not every additive in a given oil will influence the TBN. If you have a gas or diesel engine oil for your car, your SUV, your pickup truck, whatever it is that is on the ground and rolling, well, in those cases, a TBN tends to be quite a bit higher compared to what you would find in aircraft oil. Hence the reason we typically report a TBN for gas or diesel customers. People who are interested in extending their oil change intervals are often interested in a TBN, despite the fact we've been looking more towards the TAN nowadays. But we still run plenty of TBNs for our gas or diesel customers, because a reading can offer them another meaningful data point showing them that the oil has active additive remaining, and that, of course, can aid them in their decision about how long they want to run their oil. We don't run a lot of TBNs on aircraft oils in general. Even with the increased interest of late, it's been just here or there that we've seen customers interested in a TBN, and I can understand why, especially if they are people who have heard of the TBN in the context of automotive application. You would think, well, why wouldn't I want this data point for my aircraft? I'm trying to take good care of my aircraft, and I want to make sure I'm not running the oil too long. So I guess if I were to put myself in their shoes, I can understand why a TBN would spark some interest. However, if you were to call and speak with any analyst on staff, including yours truly, we wouldn't recommend a TBN because you can kind of expect a certain type of result no matter how good or bad a shape that aircraft is in, or the oil for that matter in terms of its viscosity or insolubles. Pick a property, pick an element, whatever the results may be, I can assume that the TBN is going to be pretty low. And again, this does not speak to poor quality. I looked up some recent examples of good oils, Phillips XC20W50 being one we see quite a bit. A recent used sample from a Lycoming engine had a TBN of 0.5. 2.0 is what we consider low in automotive applications. For aircraft, you're talking about TBNs that are so consistently low that I couldn't tell you really what a strong or high reading is. because it's not just Phillips 20W50 that has a low TBN. I can also point to another common oil we see quite a bit, that being Aeroshell 1550. One notable difference from Phillips 2050 is that Aeroshell 1550 uses an additive that we do see in testing, that being phosphorus. 2050, when it comes from Phillips XC, that has no additive that will show up in our tests. But when you look at Aeroshell 1550, it has phosphorus, usually around 800 to 1,000 parts per million. Despite the presence of that phosphorus additive, however, I can point to a recent Lycoming sample. Again, this is 1550 from Aeroshell, and it has a TBN of 1.6. So you may look at that and say, oh, well, that's strong relative to 0.5, but again, we're playing at such low levels here when you compare to oils that have additive that influence a TBN. So why not switch gears right now and talk about some automotive oils that do use the additive that influences a TBN, such as calcium and magnesium. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum being one I looked at recently, had a starting TBN of 7.6. But what about Rotella? That's another oil we see quite often, a starting TBN of 8.6. One of the lower readings I saw today while I was doing a quick scan was Valvoline Restore and Protect that had a starting TBN of 5.9. But again, still quite a bit higher than that 2.0 or less that we consider low. So as you run that oil, we keep an eye on the TBN, how far it's dropping, and as long as you have a reading above 2.0, that means there's some active additive remaining. But going back to these aircraft oils, keep in mind that even if you have a reading that's quote-unquote low, that doesn't necessarily mean that the viscosity will be bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's contamination, poor wear, you name it. It's just a fact of life when it comes to these oils and what's in them. They simply don't have the components that will result in a TBN that's expected to be anywhere close to that 2.0 or above. And that's whether it's new or used, whether it's mineral oil, oil that does not use additive that shows up in testing, or oils that do. You know, whether it's W100 Plus or 1550, both oils that use phosphorus, or if it's Phillips XC, or if it's Aeroshell W100 that does not contain the phosphorus additive, they all have a common thread, and that is that the TBN just won't be terribly high. It's not going to be close to that 8 or 9 or 10 that we'll often see starting out with automotive oil, so it's simply not going to have far to go before it would even hit 0.0. Some oils may even start with no measurable active additive to speak of. So with that, you want to rely on the standard analysis to really cover the bases when it comes to aircraft engine oil. You could run a TAN similar to what we do in automotive applications. However, a TBN and how high or low it is, it just doesn't mean too much. When you're playing in these margins of 0.5, 1.5, it's really not a meaningful data point with regards to how the oil is holding up or how the engine is doing, how the oil is taking care of that engine. When it comes to aircraft, you can rely on a standard analysis that includes a spectral exam telling you how that engine is wearing, if there's evidence of excess blow-by or excess dirt that's going to show up in the silicon level, looking for things like fuel, water, the viscosity, how oil filtration is keeping insolubles in check. Those data points will tell you plenty about not just the engine and how it's doing, but if the oil or oil filter appear to have been run too long. Because really, just like in automotive applications, you want to find the ideal oil change interval and make sure you're not asking too much of the engine or the oil. And with regards to that, I just don't know of any example where a TBN would overrule any of the data points I've just ran through. We can rely on a standard analysis to tell you how the engine and how the oil are doing. And for that reason, if it's the gift-giving time of year and I had one thing I wouldn't want to give an aircraft owner because it simply wouldn't offer them a whole lot of guidance, it would be the TBN. I would rather give them insight about how the engine is wearing and how the oil is holding up, and you'll gain all of that with a standard analysis. And I think it's great that we are not in a position where we push every possible test we can run on a petroleum-based product if it's not going to give you what you need or make a change to your maintenance plan. So that's our pledge, is that we will never offer testing that we wouldn't want ourselves, that we wouldn't gain anything from if it was us taking care of that engine. So with that in mind, if you're looking for something to give your aircraft this time of year, a standard analysis does more than fill the stocking. And with that, you can know that you're taking good care of what you own. That brings today's show to a close. Thank you so much for hanging with me. This is Blackstone Joe, signing off.
The Slick Talk podcast is powered by Blackstone Laboratories. If you're ready to start your oil analysis journey, visit blackstone-labs.com to order your free test kit.